Welcome into the Backroads Bill podcast. I'm Ben, and today we are going to take a bit of a cold plunge, so to speak. As last week, we were literally in the coldness in the ice hut with Matt Koprash. We talked fishing in Northern Ontario and also his journey to Mexico and on all of that stuff kind of in between. But this week, we're back in the studio and we're with a man, Clint Gore, who changed his life completely from going from a tragic accident and having a lot of mental health issues to finding the cold plunge. Literally, you've probably seen it on social media, those trends that were happening, but by using cold plunge, he's completely changed his mental outlook. He's changed his career trajectory. He's really changed his life. And a lot of that, and that basically attributes down to the cold plunge. And he has an amazing group that he works with that come all across Ontario that talk cold plunging. He has a great support system, and we had a great chat with him about all of the stuff that goes on with that, his journey, what happened to him, why he got involved in this, and of course how it's helping him today and how it could help you. And look, I'm not a cold plunge person, but you know, I might have to try it after this. It was a really cool chat. So I hope you enjoy this as much as we enjoyed having Clint on the podcast. But before we get to him, please don't forget to drop us a like, a comment, or subscribe to this podcast on whatever podcast player you listen or watch on. If it's YouTube, on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel, it helps us grow. And it helps us attract our great sponsors like today's sponsor, North Bay Toyota. It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota. Attention truck lovers. Have you been Tundra struck? The powerful and dependable Toyota Tundra is the new definition of grit. Ask us about amazing lease deals on a 2025 Tundra Double Cap SR 4-wheel drive and experience ingenious levels of capability, technology, and refinement. Or maybe you're an SUV lover? Take advantage of a limited shipment of 2025 RAV4s and discover the perfect blend of style, comfort, and efficiency in a compact SUV that ignites your desire to explore. Right now, get excellent lease deals on the Toyota RAV4 LE all-wheel drive and more. It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota, 640 McEwen, or online at northbaytoyota.com for details. Well, today we are talking about something that was funny. We were actually talking about this before when you said between the ages of 18 and 30, and I'm 30, almost 31. But we're talking about something that I don't know if I would ever do, but maybe by the end of the podcast, I'll change my tune. So we will see. But we have a really cool guest in today. It's going to be talking about cold plunging and his story and how he got into it. And it's super, super interesting. So welcome into the studio, Clint Gore.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Ben, we got you into the canoe for the North Bay Mattawa canoe race. I think we need to get you into the cold water with Clint here.
I can do canoes. I don't know if I want to go into the cold.
Well, the segue to this is that I stumbled upon Clint a couple of years ago. I was just going to go over and see our Canadian Equality Centre accountant over at Birchhaven Way, and I pull in for to look at the water. There had been a skiff of snow come down, and so I'm looking out at Trout Lake from Armstrong Beach, and a truck pulls up. A gentleman comes out, not gingerly, goes right down, and there was no toe dipping or anything. He went right into the water. Now, this is in late October, if my memory serves me right. And then I thought, I don't know what I thought. I had to watch this. And then I kind of clued in about cold plunging. Then he came out, and then I engaged him. And then the next thing you know, I was doing a story on him and finding out all about cold plunging and how not only that Clint affected me, I didn't know then that Clint would affect me a couple of years later, but we'll get into that. And Clint, that's a long-winded welcome to be on the Backroads Bill podcast, but that's how it worked. And can you tell us, and for the listeners and viewers, I think they need to know that there was, like everything in life, sometimes there's something happens that changes everything. And this is kind of the chronological order to talk about cold plunging and the effects of it and so on and so forth. But take us back to that day. when you were a petroleum mechanic?
Yeah, so I had been struggling in my life for quite some time up until that point. Anxiety, depression, just feeling like nothing in life could change. And I actually was struggling a little bit and was trying to get laid off from work. But that didn't happen. And I ended up being in Ottawa working. We were decommissioning a fuel site. And long story short, a 50,000 liter fuel tank blew up beside me, threw me 25 to 30 feet and burned 25 to 35% of my body in second to third degree burns. And so I was a little bit messed up. Not only was I struggling mentally, but then the physical side. And I didn't really know yet about PTSD. Fast forward a little bit, I struggled for about a year. Just my thoughts were always, I'm a bad dad, I'm a terrible husband, I'm a failure, nothing can change. And one day I woke up, walked in the house and basically told my wife that this is it. I'm walking down the street, I'm going to knock out everybody until the police either come and shoot me or I'm going to jump in front of a bus. So it kind of worried her. She got me up to the emergency department just for some crisis intervention. They de-escalated, and within a couple of days, I was in a place called Homewood, and I was in a PTSD recovery program. So that was kind of the start of me getting the help that I needed. It was a rough and rocky road, but Homewood gave me some hope. They just made me understand what was going on in my head. And that's when I was introduced to PTSD and why our bodies and our brains do what they do. And so I was there for around 60 days. And they gave me some insights and some hope moving out. It was not easy after I was leaving. So like the whole transformation thing from 2015 till 2025, it's been a long journey and nothing happened quickly. So it was all a lot of small things that I continually changed over time. And one of them was I was sitting at home one day after getting out from Homewood, and I was just still struggling. I felt stuck. I just didn't know how to move forward. And I was watching a video on Instagram, and I seen this guy, Wim Hof, and he started talking about how his wife had committed suicide and he was feeling empty. And he talked about his journey and how the cold water just kind of brought him back to centered and peaceful and calm, and that his thoughts stopped racing when he would go in the cold water. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to do this, and either I'm going to go in and I'm not going to come back up, or I'm going to go in and I'm going to notice a change. So I grabbed my older brother and I was just like, hey man, I got to do this. I got to find something that works for me. I'd been on like medication for anxiety, for depression, for pain, nerve numbers, sleeping pills. I was on like 7 different medications. And so I was just like, well, I might as well try something new. And I went down, down by the treatment plant, there's that creek, that moving water through there. And that was the only open water that I could find at the time. It was December. I think it was around December. And I went and I jumped in. And so the minute I jumped into the water, it was just like, and I couldn't breathe. And all I thought about in that moment was, oh my God, this is cold. But it was the first time in a couple years that I wasn't a piece of shit. I wasn't a bad dad. I didn't have all these thoughts going through my head. And in that moment, I thought to myself, wow, like, so it is possible to have a clear state of mind and not think all these bad things about me. And that's what basically got me hooked. I was addicted to the clarity in my head and not thinking all those bad things about myself.
Yeah, this is a story, and I mean, the way you tell it with such clarity. And of course, this story too is not about the novelty, I will say, of the cold plunge. It's about mental health and such a poignant lead up to where with you getting into the water, and then I think you studied a little bit of Wim Hof, and then you modified it. Because I remember the first time I did the story with you, you wanted to make it your way as well. And I mean, and there are other different methods about getting into the water. So you can tell the listeners and readers a little bit about this.
Yeah. I kind of I went through the Wim Hof training, the fundamentals, and then I did level 1. I was supposed to go over for the level 2, but that was during COVID, so everything got canceled, all the flights and everything. But I've embraced this part of my life that I think we are our own science project. And everything is a practice. And when I say everything is a practice, I just mean that when you're doing breath work, or if you're trying to get into shape, or if you're trying to change something in your life, it's a practice. You have to consistently do the small habit changes over time, and you start to notice a difference. And so when I would go into the water, I would just try different things. I would try humming. I would try toning. So I would slow down my breath I would try to do 2 breaths a minute. So I would breathe in, and then I would hum out. So it would be, and now with my lung capacity over time, I can do 1 breath a minute. And it creates a different vibration, a different feeling, and a different focus. So I'm pretty adaptable. I oftentimes dip with a lot of different people. And when I do that, it's a little bit less therapeutic for me, but it also brings me joy just to see the other people in the water. But when I'm on my own, I like to close my eyes. I like to look up at that third eye. I like to hum. I'm a big believer in giving and receiving unconditional love. And so while it makes me emotional to think about, but when I'm in the hole and my eyes are closed, I'm just giving my love to the world, because I'm just so grateful for the fact that I'm here, and that's been part of my practice. And most people, well, I'm going to say everybody who's met me along the way, which is a lot of people that I brought into the cold plunge, have felt that love and that gratitude for everybody who crosses my path.
Right. Now, Tell us a little bit about the Wim Hof method. And again, this is another question about what people should think about before they do this. But let's go back to because after taking that dip in Chippewa Creek, and saw the benefits of it, how quickly thereafter did you take another one?
It was a couple days for sure.
But you went back.
I did. I went back. But I was in my head, that was hard, because that day, the fact that I kind of was still in a dark place, and I wasn't sure if I was even coming out of that hole. So I think that subconsciously part of me, it's kind of strange to say, but part of me died there because a new version came out. But it was scary to go get back in again, because I didn't have my breathing mastered or anything like that. I just seen a guy jump in cold water and then decided to mimic it. So it was shortly after my second dip that I started to really look into it and look at the pillars. But Wim Hof, he had 3 pillars. It was mindset, breath work, and the cold. And he was the one that started to get me down the road of breath work and the importance of breath work and what it can do and the states that it can change and the emotions that it can change. So he does, before you dip, you're supposed to do some cycles. So you do 30 deep breaths in and out at a pretty good pace. And then on your 30th breath, you breathe all the way out. And then you hold your breath for as long as you can on an exhale. And then when you have that urge to breathe, you do a full inhale, and then you hold your breath for 15 more seconds, and then you repeat that cycle over and over. So that was kind of his technique. And I still do it to this day. Every morning when I wake up, part of my morning routine is I wake up, I do an hour of breath work, which I do the Wim Hof breathing. I do other styles of breathing throughout the day, but I like the Wim Hof breathing kind of puts yourself into that sympathetic nervous system, and then you take yourself out of that back into the parasympathetic when you're calming your breathing afterwards. So it's like putting yourself in an induced state of stress and then taking yourself back out of it. Same as the cold, you're putting yourself in stressful environment and then you take yourself out of it. So I enjoy that breathing for the morning because it gives me that energy throughout the day. But I also think that throughout the day, taking time to just do some slow, intentional breaths. Most people go through their day not even realizing that they're breathing. So just bringing some intention to that. But I'm off on a tangent here.
Not at all. I did it this morning. I didn't get in the water this morning. I was down at the Mattawa River. It's all frozen over. I was checking my game cameras, but it was so cold I was freezing my hands. And what did I do? I started taking the breath to take the, I have nerve damage in my fingers, but it took me away from that, and I was fine after concentrating on the breath. So we're off topic a little bit with the cold plunge, but not at all. Ben, I know we're going to start breathing heavily for good reasons because we're going to get you in the water. But you have
whoa, maybe we'll see. Might not be the canoe thing. We'll see.
But you have quite a following from near and afar, and so obviously you started inviting people, and then you started. How did that whole again? You had that moment, that aha moment that changed your life. But then where did you get that notion, okay, I want to share this with people? Because since that time, that sharing over 2 years or more, you really now have stumbled upon something that's changed your life there again.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So when I first started dipping, I went, I would say once every week or so, and just started to evolve over the years, and it was difficult. Every time you go, you'd have a different excuse to try to not to get in. But the first year and probably into the second year, I tried to get as many people as I could to come and join me for a dip. But at the time, it wasn't really as popular in social media, and everybody just thought I was crazy. So it was difficult. I would say it was probably fairly lonely for the first year and a half to 2 years. I maybe had 8 to 10 different people. In year 3 and 4, it started to get some traction in social media. I'm a big fan of social media just for the simple fact that ideas can get out there. And I don't care if people are doing it for a trend, because once they tried it, like trend or not, you have to set your intentions. Like, it's not easy to go jump into the lake. So even if you're doing it for a trend and you just jump in once and jump out, like, you have put yourself through some mental struggle, physical struggle. And so, like, I applaud you regardless. But once it started to get a little bit more popular on social media, people started to come out a little bit more. I would post 3, 4, 5 times a week on my Cold Plunge crew page. I'm going to dip, meet me here. Anybody's welcome. One thing I never did was I never ever charge. I did little retreats. I had fires. I had brought out heated tents. I did everything I could because I wanted people to. I can never make anybody experience what I experienced, but I wanted them to share the experience and see what it was like for them. And so after about 3 years, and I would say into now, the difference is that I was the one cutting the holes every second day, every third day for everybody else, and nobody was really dipping unless I was out there. And the coolest thing now is that in North Bay, we have a really large cold plunge community, and any given day I can go down there and there's somebody new dipping, and I've either dipped with them or they are dipping with people that I've introduced into it. So it's kind of neat. It's a big community, and one thing that I know is that it doesn't matter where you're at. If you see somebody going into the ice, they're cool. They're gonna be like, yeah, come on, give it a try. They'll coach you through it. And most people who are dipping and have had something happen in their life, or they're working through something, or they're trying to feel better, or they're trying to overcome something. So I think that just being around that community is super uplifting.
Yeah, well, you know what? You're kind of like the Pied Piper of North Bay in a sense. But I want to not forget, yes, you're crazy, but crazy good, Ben, because again, you're going, and we're just getting into the conversation, but I know you had a question.
Oh, I have lots. Well, one of the things I wanted to say was, you talked about going into the cold plunge and coming out, kind of being reborn in a sense. It's like a very like a baptism.
Yeah, I like that.
In a manner of speaking. And the other thing too, like when you talked about like having all this anger and then obviously where you are now, I just thought of Mike Tyson because he's like kind of in that same way of like somebody who was very angry and had a lot of issues and stuff. And then he was able to, I think he used psychedelic mushrooms, but he found a way to like kind of chill out later in life and be in a different spot. And I think it's important to understand that not everything works for everybody. Like you kind of have to find what works for you. But I think with the cold plunge, what's kind of interesting about it, like how often do you have to go? Is this something like it's almost like it's like not a medication, but like you have to go every once in a while, or is it just kind of like whenever you feel?
So this is where I kind of lose the Wim Hof method, and there's Susanna Soberg and Andrew Huberman, and they all have this thing where they talk about if you get accumulated 11 minutes a week kind of thing. It's a practice. I know when I'm not feeling great and my mind is kind of racing, I go dip, and it's an instant reset of my mind. There's so many like documented benefits of dipping, and I could sit here and regurgitate everything that I've read from all the studies, but I can tell you that I'm way more comfortable now just sharing the fact that when I started, it was because of all the stuff up in my mind, all the negative self-talk, all the limited beliefs, everything that I had going on in my mind. And it wasn't because I wanted to, develop brown adipose tissue and I wanted to lose weight, or I wanted to muscular recovery or cellular, recovery or anything like that. So is there a prescription, let's say? No, I think that, again, listen to your body. Why are you doing it? So understanding your intentions behind it. So if you're doing it for weight loss or muscular recovery, I mean, it's going to be different from if you're doing it for your mental health and, just trying to reset those thoughts. So I think that to say that there is a strict kind of regimen that you have to do is limited. I think that, again, we are our own science project. So like, figure yourself out what feels best for you. Like 3 minutes feels good for me, but it might make you lethargic and lazy throughout the day because your body's not used to it. Some people go for 10 minutes because they just want to push and, battle through some demons that they're facing. I think it's just more of an individual type thing. I'm sure I know there is some science behind it about how long you have to dip for the benefits, but I know I feel really good when things are kind of struggling and I go dip for 1.5 to 3 minutes. I come out a new person. I feel revitalized. And for me, I try to do a few dips a week. Last year, I didn't miss a day from October 1st until I missed 4 days from October 1st till May 1st. And I every day went down, chopped a hole in the ice, and it was kind of just a ritual for me. This year has been a little bit slower. I've got a lot more going on in my life. Started a new job. I moved to a new house. I have my own business that I'm starting. But I do have a cold plunge in my garage. So when
I was going to say, what do you do in the summer? Because like obviously we're limited, but I'm assuming like I've seen the machines before. I think a lot of people have.
Yeah. It's
but like if you didn't want to do that, like let's say you're just normal person, I guess you just fill a tub with ice, right? Like
cold showers. Yeah,
cold
showers are good. Like our water coming out of the pipes is 55 degrees or below. So like it's cold. And I actually think cold showers are way harder than getting into the...
See, I actually like cold. I'm like one of the weird people who actually likes cold showers, especially in the summer. Like if you work out in the summer, like a cold shower is like the same as having a hot shower normally where it feels good. The thing that I like about it is it makes you feel more alert. So I can actually I understand where you're coming from.
You would dip, no problem.
Yeah.
So like we could go
maybe.
after this show and we could get you in. Yeah.
Well,
We'll
that's one of the lead up techniques. But Ben, I was thinking back
Yeah.
that we had Mikael Ereland on our show. He's the author of The Perfect Sweat about saunas, and he was on the David Letterman show, and he's on the Backroads Bill podcast. And of course, saunas cross over many cultures and countries, but there's another aspect of sauna is that meditative approach, because he now, through a charity, sends saunas in ships containers to war-torn areas, the Ukraine, the tsunami in the east, where people at the end of their day, they come in. It's interesting from the heat to the cold, and these are easy things for us to do when we think about it.
Oh yeah. So I just started getting into the sauna now as well. I'm not a big fan of cycling between the two. It doesn't make me feel the same way as just one or the other. But I just started getting into saunas. I love it. It's so much harder. For me, a sauna is really hard. Like when you get in and it's 190 degrees, I can sit in there for like 4 or 5 minutes and I'm uncomfortable, and then my mind starts doing the racing and telling me what it wants me to do. And so it's nice to just take those deep breaths and kind of slow it down. But it's harder for me to sauna. I'm built for the cold now, so it's a big challenge.
I guess they're also kind of different too, right? Because like there's almost it's longer to be in a sauna, where it's more. I feel like it would be better if you wanted to listen to your thoughts, whereas like what you were talking about the cold plunge, like it's taking you away from your thoughts.
Yeah, and on that, like now actually when I sit in there, it's in the cold, it's more like the thoughts are always the bad ones are washed away, but then I'm just overfilled with like joy and love. Like I just sit there and I just think, how lucky am I that I live in a place that's so beautiful, that I'm surrounded with amazing people, that I have amazing people flowing in and out of my life. When, in 2015, I thought that the world was over and that nothing would change. So it's kind of interesting, kind of where my mindset has gone just from practicing some simple little habits. But the sauna is definitely right now my work in progress, just to try to take advantage, because I've heard a lot of good things about sauna, and I mean they've been doing it for hundreds of years in the Norwegian countries, and there's just so many health benefits. Like you said, lots of easy things, but a lot of time the things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. And in this culture that we've created is, we want a lot of quick fixes, and I think that the quick fixes are just Band-Aids, and they don't go down to what's really the problem. And I think a lot of people have a lot going on inside of them and are a little bit nervous and scared to face that. So I think that one of my superpowers is I went all in, and I'm an open book. I'll tell you anything you want to know about my life. It's shaped me to who I am right now, and I don't think that we need to hold back and be embarrassed about anything, because we have one human experience. And I'm so grateful that I can even sit here and share this, because if I would have taken one breath that day, it would have all been over, and I wouldn't have been able to meet all the wonderful people, watch my kids grow up. And so I think that, really working on me and developing a love for myself has translated into all my relationships, all my transactions, and everything else around me. So.
Sports aren't just what we do, they're who we are. Source for Sports North Bay is your advocate, your local support system, and your biggest fan. 1321 Fisher Street has grown from a place where knowledgeable experts can help you find exactly the gear you need, to the hotbed of team uniforms, apparel and fanwear, to a community stronghold for all the things that truly matter to you and your family's sports journey. We love helping you find your first pair of skates, as much as we relish supporting local leagues, teams, and athletes. Wherever your sports journey takes you, make sure you visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street so we can help you along your way.
Well, we're grateful to have you in the studio for sure. You can listen to that Backroads Bill podcast on saunas, but the segue is to the mental health part. And you knew it you were a poster person that very day, that very moment, and then the second time, and then off you went on you're in your journey now. But tell us now the segue now with this mental health and what you're trying to do, not only in your business, but coaching and events and those kinds of things in and around the community, because this is only going to be in your life. It's going to be the rest of your life.
Yeah. So after my accident, I struggled for a while, and I just had amazing support. And I thought to myself while I was coming through, I knew I wasn't going to be a petroleum mechanic again. So I thought to myself, like, I really just want to help people. And it's funny because before I kind of was a little anti-people. I didn't like to be around people. But once I started to like be around some people who actually cared, some of the nurses that I had, some of the therapists that I had, I was just like, I just want to do that. I want to make people feel good. And at the time, in my head, I wanted people to feel what I felt inside. Knowing better now, I can never make anybody feel what I feel. I can only plant seeds. So I consider myself a farmer. I just plant seeds of insights, nice. and when they settle in, that's great. But so I got into the mental health field. I went back to school for mental health and addictions, and I started off in crisis intervention because I lived through my own crisis, and I had some good support through there. So I did that for a few years, and it was great, but it was heavy. You're always coming home with something that's heavy on your heart. And then I got into addiction therapy. I worked at the jail, and I was an addiction therapist at the jail, which I loved the job. It was an amazing opportunity. I got to connect with people who otherwise didn't have a lot of people there for them. And a lot of support. So to be that person, it was funny because when I first walked into the jail, I'm all about love and sharing that love. And one of the people that I worked with said, "You're going to go in there and they're going to walk all over you." And within 2 weeks, I got, I'm going in and everybody's excited when I go onto the range, and they all want to get their one-on-ones and come and chat and just to hang out and chat because I was the guy to sit down and listen. And, at the end of one session, one of the guys who was one of the rough guys asked if he could give me a hug. And so, it's just funny how perception, you think that they're rugged, hard, and that, there's no good in there, but everybody has their basic needs, and being loved is one of them, and being safe is another. So it was kind of cool.
Well, that was a moment when you arrived, that's for sure, in your own mind, having done something you'd never done before, obviously after training and things like that. But I want to take you to the Cold Plunge crew. Tell us a story. I know you have many stories, but tell us one that's really poignant in your mind that sticks out from a person that maybe we all have our crises and things, but maybe it's someone that really, really, really benefits, such as you did right away.
Well, I have a friend, actually. I'll just say his first name, but his name is Derek, and he has been through so much and struggled mentally over the years, and has always been trying to, kind of find his way. And he's a savage. He goes and dips many times a week. He's such a good dude. He's started his own initiatives and stuff now as well. So I always look forward to helping him and supporting him. But it's crazy. It again was a tough start to get him in. A lot of people want to start and they tell you they're going to come out, and they kind of put it off and they make excuses and they let that inner voice dictate their actions. But once he went in, dipped the first time, he's been just crushing it ever since. We just ran an event this weekend called Soma. It's a wellness event. So we do some breath work. We had Amanda Cooley in, who is a yoga instructor in the area. And then we do the cold plunge, and he was there to support me and all the other dippers in that. So it's really just nice to see, because I feel like in his own life, he's grown so much over the past 3 or 4 years. I think also with the dipping, it allowed him to really go deeper inside and start to address. Remember, like we talked about some of those deep inner battles, and he's just been a rock star. But I meet so many cool people. Like I just think it's so neat that you climb in the water and then all of a sudden you have a conversation and you know so much about somebody and like personal stuff about somebody the minute that you get together to go into the water, because they just feel like it's okay to be vulnerable in this moment. Because again, most people who are dipping have been through something and are working through something. So it makes it a little easier to just reach out and share. So I wouldn't say that there's one specific occasion that kind of stands out in my mind. I just am so grateful that I've met thousands of people through dipping, and so that's 1,000 cool stories and 1,000 different reasons why somebody is, going to an extreme length, a difficult one, to try to feel better.
Yeah, late October and early November, before I had my hip replacement, I was thinking of you, because I'd go down to the Mattawa River, I'd drive my car down, get out. I wasn't as mobile because my hip was waning, but I would do some breathing. I turned the radio on in the beginning for some reason just to keep me company. It was by myself. It was dark. It was always dark at night. And I'd get into the river and sit in the river, and I would start to, do my breathing, concentrate. Now, it's not as cold as in the wintertime, but it's still cold. And so that's the last time I was thinking of you. And then, of course, Ben, we had coming to the Backroads Bill podcast, thought we got to get Clint on, because this is one of these, not because it's community, but when you think about it, this is something that anyone can do if they have instruction and coaching and those kinds of things. But I know you wanted to ask something else.
Yeah, I wanted to ask talk about a little bit about the mining industry, because it's such a fascinating industry. Because I've had the pleasure of meeting some like really high up. We've had Roy Slack on this show. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I find fascinating is the people who are at the very top of the chain, you could never tell. They feel like they are the same people you would meet if you met like a mid-level executive person, which is pretty cool. The other side of that, though, is there's a lot of mental health problems in the industry because of people going out of town and being on this kind of cycle. My brother-in-law is kind of in that spot right now where, he just started working in the industry and he's been kind of cycling, and he has kids at home and stuff. And so there's a lot of mental health things. Now, that's been a huge focus on the industry. We've done some work with Bring It to the Surface, which is the CDDA, the Diamond Driller Association. Like, they're doing it. I know you're working with them a little bit. We've done some stuff with cementation and some mental health things. And I think when you look at the mining industry, and it's not just the mining industry, it's that kind of macho construction-esque stuff, and you coming from that background, because part of your story is also you asked for time off and they didn't give it to you, and that was the next day was when the accident happened. And I just kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about your work specifically in the mining industry, and kind of where you've seen strides and where you'd like to see it go.
Yeah. So, and for myself, I never worked for a mine, but I did build fueling systems up in a lot of the northern mines. So I know what it's like to go in that and work on those cycles. Yeah. So like up in De Beers Diamond Mine, I built the fueling station there. And Detour Gold Mine, I was up there and I built that fueling station. But they're obviously holding on to a lot of outdated beliefs, like you can't talk about this shit, like you got to show up, work comes first. And a lot of those thoughts are built because like work comes first, because if we don't, then we're not bringing money home, we're not doing this, we're not, providing for our family. And a lot of guilt and shame, like you said, from living on the road. You're missing out on hockey tournaments and birthdays and whatever else it might be. There's always something going on. And so we start to have this guilt. And what do we do with the guilt? We pack it in. We don't share it with anybody. We just try to get over it, because that's what we do, right? We just get over it. And when we start thinking to ourselves things like, this is just how it is, I just get over it, you're weak if you need to seek support, that just perpetuates the cycle of this toxic mindset. And so my goal is just to share a little bit about journey, talk about, the discovery of self and little habits that we can practice super easily that are going to, maintain a healthier lifestyle. We don't sleep the same. We're in a strange bed in a little Atco trailer that can burn down in 2 minutes if it catches fire. We don't eat the same. We don't have the same routines. There's all kinds of things that change on the road. So developing strategies and practices to help get you through that. And like 3 of the biggest insights that I've had through my recovery and journey is 1, the power of connection. So when you start to struggle, you start to isolate. You don't want to tell anybody. You just keep it to yourself and you just stew that out. As you're spiraling down, your mind is starting to create all different kind of scenarios and stories that I'm a bad dad, I'm not a good husband, whatever it might be, but it can spin out of control and you believe it. And then you just keep that inside and it gets bigger and bigger and one day it's going to burst. And it's normally a lot harder to put together rather than reaching out early. So the power of connection, the power of speaking up. Nobody will ever know what you're going through unless you tell them, because we can all walk around with these smiley faces and put up a front. But if we're not talking about it, we're not sharing it with somebody. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be your crew leader. It can be one of the guys on the crew, right? So it's the power of speaking. And then the journey to develop some self-worth. We don't develop self-worth. We inherently have self-worth. To realize our self-worth and practice some self-care. So I think that if we can develop a strong self-care practice working on the road, it makes a huge difference. I'm super excited that through the CDDA and bring it to the surface, I'm working with them to develop some wellness workshops. So it's gonna be called Bring It to the Surface, How to Maintain Your Head Assembly. So it's just going to be, talk about warning signs, talk about triggers, talk about how we can reach out, talk about who you can reach out to, talk about how the organizations now are taking into consideration the fact that people who are struggling are at risk of injuries or burnout or death. And so like putting a focus and making it, I don't want to say a safe space because that's earned and kind of created over time, but like a brave space where you can come forward and say you're struggling and not have to worry about missing the next paycheck, setting up different programs, having different people available. So it's super exciting that I can be a part of that and just bring some personal experience to it. And again, I do believe that we all have the power to take our health into our own hands and our wellness. We just have to have the resolve to stick to some small habit changes over time. And that's the tough thing as humans, is being consistent with anything. And I can guess that everybody in this room has had some issues with being consistent with things. One thing that we are consistent with, though, is showing up for other people. You'll go to work every day, get that paycheck. You'll commit to a friend and show up for them, but how are you committing to yourself and how are you showing up for yourself? That's something that I really like to talk to people about, because you're the most important person in the world, and every relationship outside of you comes from inside of you. So if you're having struggling relationships everywhere, you can look deep inside and figure out that there's something going on inside of you that's causing that. So I just like to bring these little insights to people because we are in a lot more control than we think. It just takes a little bit of practice.
Yeah, the cold plunge, that's complementary to the cold plunge. And I was just thinking historically, in winter fur carnivals anywhere, they'd have the polar bear dip. And that was kind of like a rite of passage or a bragging rights to go into the water. But all of a sudden, when you put it in a different perspective, the mental health perspective, this is good therapy.
Yeah. It's been nothing but, my whole life has changed. And again, it wasn't just the cold; it was things with the cold. But the fact that, I had that moment where I was just willing to try something different. And it's just led to so many different things, so many different healthy habits, being able to push through things, challenging limiting beliefs has all basically stemmed from jumping in that cold water that day.
And it feels like it's not even the cold plunge, it's like the effects of it. So it's like you just need to find out what your personal cold plunge is.
Yeah.
Whether that's a cold plunge or it's a sauna or it's medicinal herbs or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to find what lets you get in that same mind space. Because I feel like sometimes people they'll say, oh, well, you're saying I have to cold plunge, so I have to do that. And they hate it and they don't stick with it or whatever. It's the same thing with dieting or anything else. Like people will be like, oh, I have to be keto or I have to do this. And it's like, well, you don't have to do that. You just have to find the things that you stick with and being able to look at yourself and say, what do I struggle with and how can I do it better instead of trying to force the pieces.
Well, we're looking at Ben, but we'd be looking at anyone right now. So what are some of the things that you would tell people before, like Ben or like myself or anyone, before they would thinking right now, listening to us, what they should think about before considering a cold plunge?
Well, I don't think there's much to consider when you're thinking about a cold plunge, well, other than like how's your heart health and you know the major things. But
that's actually important though. What do you need to know before you go in cold plunge? Like you just said, heart health, but
yeah, I would want to know like just basic lifestyle stuff. And I mean, if you're a little bit older, have you ever had any heart issues, like high blood pressure, stuff like that? You can still practice cold exposure with any of those. It's just a little bit more controlled. But I always ask people to like just close your eyes and what's your intention for this dip? Like I believe that, you know, we can lead a little bit more intentional life. Answers come to us, and situations kind of fall into place when there's a little bit more intention. And that being said, when I'm going to meet with somebody, I like to set my intention, take a few deep breaths, set my intention when I don't react anymore. So I'll take a few deep breaths and set my intention for what I want to get across. But why are you dipping? Are you dipping because it's cool? Are you dipping because you want to try something hard? Are you dipping because you want a shift in your mindset? Are you dipping for whatever it is? But those are the main questions I ask. And then when there's the doubt, because there's always somebody who has a lot of doubt, it's just letting them know that they have been through so many things in their life already. Ben, I'm sure you've been through things where you're just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And you're here, you've done it. And it's the same thing.
Every time I start a new project, I go, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, you got through the canoe race, that's for sure.
How am I going to do this, right?
Yeah.
So the human spirit is so strong, and when it's, you know, set in that right direction, you can pretty much do anything. So I really, it's funny. So one description of me this weekend was that somebody was really struggling to get in the ice, and one of the other people came up to me after and said, I was in the sauna with so-and-so, and they said you hypnotized them into getting into that water. And they said you were calm and you just made it just feel like it was a complete normal thing and just your energy. So for me, when somebody is like really worried about them, I just get them to look at me, because when we're in a situation and we're looking at somebody else, we kind of mimic their energy. So you'll notice when in a crisis situation, this is what I learned in crisis, but when somebody's in a crisis, if you're not trained well and you're seeing them in a crisis, you're elevating that whole time. So the key is to like bring yourself into a calm state and bring them into a calm state. So I encourage people, I empower them. I just tell them like, this is not going to be the hardest thing you're going to do in your life. And I just make it kind of seem super simple. And then I get them in and I said, just keep looking at me while you're in there, because I'm going to take you through the process. I know exactly what's going to happen. You're going to get in, you're going to panic, you're going to start breathing fast. I want you to look at me. I want you to relax your shoulders. I want you to relax your jaw. I want you to just breathe with my hand, and I'll take them through the breath work. And you just start to slow things down. And once you start to slow things down, things start to clear up in your mind. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this isn't too bad. And then I'm sitting there with somebody who's totally freaked out about getting in, having a conversation. You can see the moment their face relaxes in the water, and that's when you start to engage with them. And then you look at them and you're just like, so how are you? They're like, this isn't even that bad. And most times people, even if they get out quick, they'll get out and they'll realize that their core temperature didn't drop that much in that time. They were just panicked. And so they get back in, and then you go through the breathing with them, and then they get out and they're all excited. And I always say, though, to everybody, whoever comes and dips, that I'm so proud of you, and that, like, I hope you really realize that you overcame these thoughts, because you've been putting it off, or you've been struggling all morning. I've been looking at you all morning, because I look at everybody who's there, and I just watch their body language, because it tells me what I have to do, right? And so when I see somebody who just looks panicked and kind of pale and scared all morning, and once they've been through it, I'm just like, man, that was so easy for you. You did it, and you breathed through it, and like, you could breathe through anything. And just plant that seed, right? Again, the power of the breath, power of the cold, and, you know, just celebrate all those little wins. When we start focusing on all the little wins, the little win was 1, setting your intention to come here today. 2, showing up. So now you set your intention, you showed up. If you just stick your toe in the water today, you've done it. So, like, really grasping the fact that you're just showing up for yourself and you're following through. It's how you build integrity. That's how you build your confidence. It's how you build your sense of self-esteem. So everyone who went, everybody who goes, everybody who's ever dipped, I'm so proud of them. And, like, literally have fed my energy and built me up just as much. So,
well, maybe you're not a Pied Piper. Maybe you're more like old MacDonald had a farm. You're planting seeds. But tell us where they can reach you on social media, and I think you have a website as well.
Yeah, I have, on Facebook, Cold Plunge Crew.
Right.
That's my group. When you first met me 2 years ago, we were at, I think, 1,600, and now we're up around 10,000. Ice Cold Clint on TikTok, just fun social media stuff. I post about mindset. I post about just anything uplifting and that could help, your day-to-day kind of struggles, and just show some of my own progress. And then Elevate Mind Lifestyle on Instagram. And that's kind of, again, I just talk about mindset stuff and the daily practices that I go through, and I also share struggles. I make it as real as I can, because I don't like to portray my life as being perfect, because I struggle every day just like everybody else. I have limiting beliefs. I'm a mindset coach, and I have limiting beliefs, and I have imposter syndrome, and I deal with all these things. But I think that when we can connect and have conversations, we're not talking at somebody, we're talking with them, and it's a reminder to self of the things that you have to continue to do in your own life. So, yeah, those are the places. And I'm on LinkedIn. Check it out. Clint Gore.
Yeah, there's so many things that are interesting about, like, even on your way in today, I'm sure there was, like, you didn't know what to expect, or, well, I mean, Bill, so there's that familiarity. You've been in this studio before, so there's some familiarity there. But I'm sure there was still some stuff going on that, you get kind of pumped up about it, or psyched up about it.
Or even when I get talking. So for me, I like to sit down and just have conversations, and wherever the conversation goes, it goes.
Yeah.
And I have a little bit of ADHD, so my mind races all over the place, and there's a million things that I want to talk about and a million things I want to share. But I think if anybody takes anything from what I talk about, is that, again, you're definitely worth any effort that you put into yourself. You're worth, treating yourself like you're the prince or princess of the world, and really give yourself a lot of love, and that love will come out in everything that you do. So I just mind races all these things that I want to share and talk about, just because they've been impactful in my own life. Mm-hmm. And I just want people to feel good. I want them to see that greatness within them. We're all divine beings. We're all here for a reason. We're all worthy, and we all deserve to give and receive unconditional love. And that's my message.
Well, the listeners and viewers will want to go for a dip, Ben.
Yeah, we'll see. I might go for a dip. I don't know. I've done cold showers before. That's fine. It's not bad. And again, I think it's that shock, that initial like shock. You don't get that with like heat. And I could see how that's very. People aren't used to that. If they've never experienced that before, it's a weird feeling because your heart starts to race, as you said, and it's like everything kind of locks up. But once you get used to it, it's like, and again, I feel like I've already done this now because I've taken cold showers.
Yeah,
so it's the same thing where it's like, it's a weird thing where it's like, it's cold, but it's like almost more enjoyable than when it's hot.
Well, this podcast has been a lot of audio, but I think with our conversation, this has been very, very visual.
Yeah. Well, now I feel like I'm already a connoisseur of.
I think you can do it. Like, there's no question. If you've cold showered, man, the cold plunge, you're gonna do it, and you're gonna go, oh well, that's not.
That was easy. What was Clint talking about? It's super easy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyways, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, a big thank you to Clint for coming on, and who knows, maybe one day I will take the plunge, pun that time was definitely intended, into the cold water and see what it's all about. But as the immortal John Bon Jovi once said, I'm halfway there, or we're halfway there. We're halfway there? Something like that. I don't remember. Anyways, I'm halfway there with the cold showers. So, maybe one day. I don't think it's crazy, but again, thank you to Clint for sharing his story and sharing something that maybe will help you in the future if you're somebody who also struggles with some of the same issues or maybe some entirely different issues. So if you enjoyed this episode, you can find more episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast on all of your favorite podcast players. Of course, the video version of this podcast is available on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. And you can find new episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast every single Wednesday morning. And of course, you can always find us on northbayecho.ca, where we have a whole slew of other shows like To North Bay with Love, Echo Essentials, and the Echo Sportscast. We have new episodes that drop every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday across our core shows on the network, and a whole bunch of other shows on there as well that we don't produce in-house, but other great talented people in the area produce and put out on a consistent basis. So check that out, again, northbayecho.ca. And that wraps things up for us here at the Backroads Bill podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you again next week for another Backroads adventure.